days ago, our Vice President, Enna Virkkunen, launched the ADACities call for expression of interest. Today, we are going to zoom in to the merits of this call, the scope, the objectives, how the call relates to the other activities that we are doing in the field of intelligent connected mobility within the Commission, and in particular within the G-Connect. As many of you probably know, yesterday and the day before yesterday were quite important event for us because we ran through 2 days of discussion about autonomous mobility, autonomous driving. We had a significant amount of participants in 2 days. First day was really the inauguration of the forum and then the info, so the call for expression of interest. As I said, and then yesterday in particular, we have seen quite important discussions related to coming from the working groups of the ECAVA forum. And we have seen that there is a lot of developments concerning the technology stack. That is the first thing that we have to do, bring autonomous mobility in our European cities. We need to be able to develop a competitive solution across all the elements of the technology stack, but also we have to make sure that then various solutions fully made in EU will be taken up. And that's the reason why we have the ADACities initiative. So this is a call for expression of interest, which means that we really call the entire community to express their views, their plans, including some details that would be extremely precious for us, then eventually to analyze and to shape more precisely than the future, possible future calls. Of course, this comes in a particular important moment for us because we are also reflecting about the next multi-annual financial framework, in particular concerning the various strengths of the MFF, including the Competitiveness Fund, maybe there is also the CEF, and the various other programs that are encoded in our proposal. So your input via the call for expression of interest could also be important for us to inform, let's say, the ongoing and future framing. So I stop here with this. Welcome you again. I mean, I give the floor to Max and to Velimira. First to Velimira, then to Max, and then back to Velimira. And then there will be a whole of other colleagues that will take the floor to zoom in, as I said, into the various elements of the call for expression of interest. And also, especially, it's important to contextualize this call for expression of interest in the broader picture. Because, of course, this is a quite complex area that we have not only the investment side, we have also the policy, we have the regulatory dimensions, and it's important, of course, that everyone is aware about the complex picture that we have. It's ambitious, as the word says, but I think that we are all ready and account that we, as a community, we will be all ready to make it. Thank you very much and enjoy the info day.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Franco, for these introductory remarks, which walk us actually through the logics behind our event today. Before giving some housekeeping rules, I just want to briefly walk you through the day. There will be 2 main parts. One part which will basically cover the initiative itself, but also the link of the initiative with the entire work of the European Commission. As we know, the European Commission has different departments, but as Franco said, we need to ensure synergies across those, and this will be what we'll cover in the first part of the day. And then in the second part of this info session, we'll be covering a more focused and deployment landscape targeted information session, where basically we'll be focusing on the perspectives from industry, from cities, for different players across the ground. So the first part will be mainly led by us, European Commission team, and the second part will be led by our partners and colleagues from the EIT Urban Mobility. I will not go now in more details than that, but would like to walk everybody through a few housekeeping rules that will apply both actually for the on-site and online participants. First, as you know, this session is live streamed on YouTube and will be recorded. So therefore, I would like to ask everybody, when not speaking, please mute your microphone so that we can avoid background noise and disturbances. Then online participants and speakers who are not actively intervening may switch off their camera if preferred. When taking the floor, please ensure that your microphone and camera are switched on and that your name is displayed. Questions from the audience will be collecting through YouTube, mainly for the first part. For the second part, though, we think that it will be much more opportune that we go through a Slido, but we'll be walking you through these logistical elements further on. When it comes to timing, I would just like to ask colleagues and also our entities who will be intervening online to stick to the allocated time so that we can really follow the different aspects. So with this, basically, I would like to start the first part of this event. So I will hand over the floor to a person who is basically the spirit and the brain behind the ADACities initiative, Dr. Max Lemke, who is currently advisor in the Connected European Commission for Connected and Automated Mobility. Those who have been following the ECAVA days with us know that he's a kind of a legend in this domain. So we would like really to enjoy having still Max with us so that he presents us and talk everybody through the initiative. Max, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much for the nice words, Velimira, introducing me here. So what I'll try to do in the 15 to 20 minutes that I have, I will drive you through our thoughts behind ADACities and also through our design decisions that we had to take. We got a lot of comments, but we couldn't take all on board because they were contradictory. Yeah, so we always have to take these kind of decision. Just for you have received a link where we published the scoping paper and the call for expression of interest. I really advise you to read the scoping paper. Don't just go into the call for expression of interest, which is more a formal thing. But the scoping paper says what we think. We are willing to also update it because it's work in progress. So don't take it as cast in iron for the future. Please help us to improve it. Now, let me start with some messages from yesterday, which very much link to what I've put on this slide here. Autonomous driving at the moment takes place outside Europe. That's reality. Yeah, so that's a kind of a message. But European cities are ready to scale. We have heard from Hamburg, from Zagreb, from Brescia, but there are others around as well who are ready. They would like to do it, and they need the framework to be able to do it. We see global partnerships of the European OEMs with technology stack providers from the US, from China, from Israel, from the United Kingdom. And it's not only a reason that we don't have the technology stack. The other reason behind it is the data, because in these other countries, there's easier, or in many of them, there's easier access to data. So it's easier for them to provide the AI models for the AD technology stack. So one of the key points to make our OEMs to be able to compete is also access to data, yeah, and data sharing for federated learning. Yeah, so it's a key issue, and in all the initiatives that we do on the regulatory side, ADACities on the deployment side, AI factories to support the development of AI models together with these trusted data lab infrastructures, we are working a bit in this direction. So a core requirement that was spelled out during the big ECAVA event over the last 2 days was that we need harmonized approval rules, regulatory sandboxes while the regulation is updated. If we wait until the regulation is final, that takes too long. Yeah, so we need the opportunity of regulatory sandboxes to do that. That's number one. And the second one is the 15 million we put on the table is a drop in the ocean. We can just get organized with that. So what we need is targeted investments. And targeted investments for me means beyond EU programs. EU R&I and even deployment programs will not be able to settle that. Look at what Waymo, what other companies are investing. So if we don't get private investment and the trust of private investors that our companies can be successful, so it's worth investing, we will not get further. That was a key message. I'm not saying what I think. I may agree on that as well, but I'm saying what we heard over the last days. So that's what we have to do. So in ADACities, one of the core points that we have put is aggregation. Aggregation means cities to work on requirements to have one type of vehicle that they need in order, and then to see how we find the money to, and the cities told me, next step for me is buy me 100 vehicles. Because having 3 pilot vehicles and adding one doesn't change the situation. It's just high cost for cities, high costs for OEMs. And the OEMs tell us, if we don't get to 5,000, 10,000 vehicles minimum, we don't even start a business case. Yeah, so we don't get approval from management to even start that. So we have to work on that, and ADACities is there to work a bit in that direction. So what you see here, the take up, the rollout in some countries, United States, in China. You also see the motivation, and I explained it. You see the European OEMs working together with many companies from the countries I mentioned. We see the AI-based autonomous driving value chain, and you will see there is a big gap in the middle where we are very weak in Europe. We are addressing that. Like when you look at the lithography, yes, we are fine. We have ASML and size. Yeah, so that's where we are world leading. That's why we are part at the table usually on microelectronics and chips. Wafer fabs, AI chip design, that's what is ongoing. You heard about the tech sovereignty package. And this is a clear point. In the tech sovereignty package, we are addressing these points towards there is a CHIPS communication in there, which is the CHIPS Act 2. On the training big data, we see that the plan for the IPSA-AI is moving in that direction. That's a member states initiative. We had matchmaking events in March between member states, and we commission, in that sense, DG Comp, the competition authority, the European one, will expects proposals to come by August, starting August. So it may go a bit later than August, but they expect that. But this then has to go through the procedures for the IPSA. So that is happening. And I have asked the question yesterday again, does Europe need an ecosystem for an AD technology stack itself? Can we stay dependent? You saw the Anthropic Mythos case. So can we stay dependent? Should we be waiting for governments, other governments tell us you cannot use that technology anymore? Yeah, so that's a big point. And that is a point that we haven't solved. So we are asking that question again and again. And I hope I have more by October on that when we present these roadmaps. So next point for me is, I already presented one slide, so that's my summary slide. I will go through details in another one, but I wanted to use the same as I had used in all the events. So you have a certain continuity also in your vision that you see. Let me go on the right-hand side. ADACities for ADACities, autonomous drive ambition cities. The overall goal is to support cities and industry in scaling L4, level 4 autonomous vehicles, from pilots to market-ready deployment. So you see 2 key points there. You see industry and EU cities. And with industry, I mean EU industry, obviously, to a large extent. And that is also seen when you see on the right-hand side the picture. We have industrial interests, we have the cities' interest, and obviously we have the regulation, the regulatory side, but it's equal. Yeah, there's not one above the other because it's a common move forward, and data sharing is at the core of all that. So having said that, let me go through some core elements. We basically see two strands. We see the strand of ADACities pioneers. They need to get going. So we plan to support 5 to 7 in a call that we issue in October. When we know the results from the call for expression of interest, they are not linked, but we learn from the expression of interest, and then we have a call under Horizon Europe. That basically means get going, but it's, as I said, 15 million is a drop in the ocean. It is to prepare the case for more, because if these companies that we have, the cities, go to investors, to equity, to private risk capital now, they will just tell them, we don't see that you can make it because the others are so strong. So it's not a win case for us, so we don't invest. So we have to make that case. And that is really what we want to do with these pioneers. And then the network is capacity building and get the others to get up to speed. So we get to these 10,000 or multiples thereof for the OEMs to have a business case. Now, in terms, next point for me is the use cases. We had to concentrate. There were people who told us you need freight. There were others who told us you need the large buses because we want autonomous bus lines. We cannot do everything. We have to start. We may do something new next year, but we said we focus on one vehicle platform, multiple vehicle applications in a company. And when you look at some of the companies, let's take the big ones, let's say Volkswagen, Stellantis, they have these platforms and go across different vehicles from cars to shuttles. Yeah, so that's an example. I'm not saying they are our target. I'm saying there are many more targets, but we want to go for one platform. We in a city in this pioneering phase. We don't want to fragment it too much. And we have 3 applications in mind. And we would also like to focus on that. That's ride-hailing robot taxis. We need that also for European reputation. We need to move on that because otherwise we are third world. Yeah, so we have to move on that. We need autonomous shuttles. Autonomous shuttles, I really don't mean the big buses. I mean the smaller shuttles that deliver on-demand services, for example. They may also go on some lines, like on weekends, and only pick up passengers where there are passengers. They may go to a handicapped person and pick the handicapped person up at home. Yeah, so we see certain applications there. And then the last one is L4, level 4 point-to-point navigation. It happens on level 2. We have to collect the data so that we introduce the redundancy in the vehicles, the technological redundancy that can substitute the safety driver. Yeah, so that's another one. So that is the vehicles. And then we have the big points, the most important points that we need to address across cities in other cities. That's data sharing, yeah? But not only vehicle data sharing, also traffic and transport data sharing. And that's aggregation of demand and aggregation of supply. If we don't aggregate in the middle, we will not make it. We will stay with small numbers of vehicles. And for that, we say basically in other cities, we would like to see EU-centric partnerships. EU-centric means we are not excluding the others, but we want to be EU-centric. Obviously, we need EU cities, EU and if we use programs like Horizon Europe, the associated countries, we need those. We need our cities. We need EU and associate country base vehicle manufacturers. That's important for the base vehicles. And we take it very strict when we talk about European, we mean headquartered in Europe and not majority owned by somebody outside. Yeah, so we are quite strict on that because we really want to support European industry. And Then we say, but we allow partnerships and we want partnerships. So we say at least one of the three that we mention here should be from the EU. And that's at either the AD stack technology provider, that's the mobility service broker, that's the platforms, yeah, and that is the mobility service operator, which may be very local. So we have a bit put that as a rule, but we want to see in the expression of interest, is that feasible? How feasible is it? So we would like to also get your feedback on that, taking the industrial policy dimension, the competitiveness agenda, and the mobility dimension in cities together. And is this a good compromise? Yeah, we know it's a compromise. It's not perfect. Cities may want just foreign technologies because they want it out, but not with our program, I would say, in this sense, yeah, because we have to marry the two objectives. Now, next slide is for me on the core elements. You'll hear a lot more about that. I will not go into detail because my colleagues here, who I would like to thank very much as well for their collaboration with us on the ADACities paper, because it couldn't have done without them. We are basically in the commission, we are several DGs who work on that, primarily DG Move, DG Grow, DG RTD, us, and also to some extent JRC. So we are all working together on that, and we have their feedback, and what we have presented now is in agreement with them. It's not something that one DG does, it's a commission initiative. Yeah, so that is, I think, is very important to say. And on the provisions, we work with the colleagues here, they explain you the details on the baseline, the regulatory provisions of the joint declaration of intent by member states on cross-border test beds. I depicted here on the right-hand side. There's the regulatory governance, which is extremely important for ADACities, but also the operational deployment, where we also see complementarity with the operational deployment in ADACities. Then we have a colleague here from the AI office who will speak about use of innovation measures under the AI Act. And we have a colleague here to talk about the risk assessment of connected and autonomous vehicles that has been done recently. We have some presentation on coordinated data sharing, federated AI model, harmonizing regulation at all levels is a key issue. It is across all, I think, the speeches. And on top is this EU competitiveness sovereignty issue that was is based on the tech sovereignty package that was published 2 weeks ago. And there we, for example, have the issue of EU-based homologation, and the colleagues from DG Grow will give you a bit more detail on that. Now, I come to the implementation before I then hand over on the expression of interest. So ADACities we are in the initiation phase, obviously, and you know, we are, let's say we are short of money. That is usually at the end of programs. So we can just put things in place. So as soon as we have money, we are ready. So I want that we get ready when there is funding and also investment programs under the next framework program starting end of next year. So we exploit synergies for now with what happens in SECAM, in particular the large-scale pilots. It's a €100 million investment. So we have to build on that and just put the last missing bits and pieces so it contributes to ADACities. We have the digital program. We have worked on the European, on the data space, mobility data space, and European mobility data space. We have a European Digital Infrastructure Consortium being in preparation on mobility and logistics, and they already have a support action of quite a large number of million who is engaged. And we have the AI factories emerging, including data labs. So there is, for example, one which works particularly often for the automotive industry. Yeah, so yes, this is also emerging. And we have other running and coming initiatives. Coming, I also mean, if it's coming, the IPSE. Yeah, the IPSE for AI has a very important dimension here, and Europe should not copy and do things differently. So the ADACities Secretariat, you hear more about it, is done by the Boost EDIC project. I'm very thankful to the Boost EDIC Consortium to take that on board. I think it's a win-win situation also for Boost EDIC and the EDIC, the European Digital Infrastructure Consortium. It's a very concrete thing to get success very quickly. So the Secretariat is supporting the EDIC and provides the Secretariat, I would say, 2 million plus in their budget, which is available. So they will start retroactively as soon as we have done, probably on the 1st of July. That's the planning. So the role is networking, ecosystem building, supporting promotion, workshops and matchmaking for future calls and cross-cutting issues. They are not evaluating with us the call for expression of interest. That's how Germans would call it, hoheitliche Aufgabe. That's a role of the European Commission, but they help us in promoting that. So they don't get preferential information as opposed to others in that Secretariat. I think that's very important to say. Cross-cutting issues they need to address is regulation, aggregation, investments. And then we launch a call. What we call a bridging action. It opens in Q4 2026. It's still in the final approval procedure, so that's why it carries a TBC on the right-hand side to be confirmed. We want to support 5 to 7 cities across 5 member states because we want several member states to start. I know it's too little. We are fully aware of that. We want to do more, but at the moment we don't have more. We want to help them to get the prototyping equipment up, to integrate the vehicles in the transport infrastructure. That happens individually, but you should look at the requirements across. And then you have the cross-city coordination that we discussed, sharing data, interoperability requirements, coordination linked to the AI factories and data labs. I'm finished. And now on my last slide, you better look at that in the scoping paper because you may need some time to digest it. The important point here, I've already said for everything that is done on the initiation phase. I would just like to emphasize this can only be successful if we are convincing in the initiation phase and get the acceleration and scaling phase going. Otherwise, it will be dead from the start. We need funding in future for that, or better investment, and we need to convince investors for large-scale deployment and industrial scaling. For that, we need the different programs we have in the EU, in the member states, in some way to work together. And that's also one of the roles of the ADACities Secretariat, not to make it happen, but to establish the group of people who talk about that. And that can go from all kinds of direction, like FP10, fine, but also the Competitiveness Fund, the EIC, the InvestEU, the cohesion funds, and all kinds of programs, the IPSE, all kinds of programs that exist. We have to see how we can get that going. So with that, I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and I hand over to Velimira, who tells you something about the call for expression of interest that the Commissioner has launched 2 days ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Max. And I will take after this comprehensive overview of the initiative. I will give the main features of the call for expression of interest that was published on the 23rd, together with the scoping paper. And as Max actually mentioned, what is important, I would like to start with that for those of you who are interested by the call, it is extremely important to read the scoping paper and consider it really as a full and integral part of the call, because the call in itself, without the scoping paper as underlining background, would not be sufficient for you to basically grasp what we have in mind. As you can see on the slides, what we would like to give you today is the full overview of a little bit what was our thinking behind it, but also what are the info requested, for what purpose, and how actually this info will structure in what we'll consider to be the next steps in rolling out this initiative. I will start with the objective, which is basically to identify which are the partnerships or what we call the leading consortia, who can be the front runners or the pioneers in terms of passing, we would say, in Europe, the initiative from the level of pilots to large-scale deployment. And the base, let's say that the basic feature of this call, and the main overarching objectives, is to really identify where we stand in terms of cities' preparedness, and in terms of how the needs of the cities are matching also the needs of the industry. As Max mentioned, there is one important point in this initiative, which is basically that we would like to benefit from the cities being the playground for our industry, for finding a business case which may make in Europe autonomous driving deployment a success, so that we go beyond we do now, which is trialing and pilots, where we succeed relatively well, but where we're really lagging behind is how to scale this, how to structure. And basically what we look for in this call is to see where we stay there in terms of preparedness, and where we stand in terms of a wish in bringing more synergies across the different actors, and we would like to use the local level and the cities in order actually to achieve this. So basically, in terms of the info that will be requested from those who are expressing their interest, the first important part that I would like to mention is that you should consider actually your expression of interest and the way we will be submitting it, I would say, in two parts. One part, which is the executive summary, and the other part, which is basically a more detailed overview. So why I speak of this in terms of two parts? First, because the executive summary will be made public. And actually, and I here turn to Max because it was his idea, and I definitely find it very good. The idea is that the executive summaries could be published so that we can inform everybody of who has applied, with what level of preparedness, what is put forward, but also in order to create more synergies and to be able to see how we can structure a network. And then I'm speaking beyond also Max is played. We have the pioneers, but also the networks. But as I'm sure also colleagues from other DGs will say, we are above all trying to build an ecosystem, and for this it's good that we know and start building a bit of a database of where we stand and who are the actors that are interested. An information that we'll be looking for then much more in terms of more detailed applications is where we stand in terms of readiness, what is the project readiness, where the city or the urban or peri-urban authority stays in terms of partnerships, with whom the partnership will be built, what is the EU-centric level of the partnership that is being constructed, and also how the financing plan looks like. What are the needs? What can be financed? What is the blending between private and public funding? But also what is the governors and the different roles in the consortium? Who will be doing what, and how this can be proceed further? As we have mentioned yesterday, also with my colleague from DG Grow, and we have been discussing synergies with the testbed initiative in the autonomous driving working group. What is important also to mention that here it is important to see what is the level of preparedness and how the things structure, and to build upon the different initiatives, but also in terms of self-assessment, what we wanted to achieve is above all to have a full overview of where we are. And this is also something which is evolving. We want to use this call to identify the needs, but also to better understand how the sector is evolving and to build with other colleagues from other DGs with these initiatives to create the right ecosystem. And from that perspective, this call is thought and designed as a non-financial call, in the sense that there will be no financing going with it, and therefore we go for asking for a self-assessment by the applicants and those who will be expressing interest, to say whether they consider themselves more as a frontrunner, so more as pioneers, or as part of the network stages. And then, of course, there will be financing coming along the lines that that Max mentioned. I do not want to go too far away and take too much time, basically in terms of presentation, putting other colleagues late, which is already a bit the case. But what I wanted to say in terms of next step, that after we receive all the applications, basically in the call for expression of interest, you have a functional mailbox, you have a place where you can send also your questions. But after we proceed with the analysis of the expressions of interest we have received, we will be also thinking in terms of refining further steps of the initiative, and also how bringing in dimensions probably that we have not thought about, and do the funding strategy behind it, and what would be the further ecosystem support measures. And what you see last on the slide is basically a reminder of what Max mentioned, the fact that we are in the process of reflecting, and which is not yet confirmed, of going for a bridging action call under Horizon Europe. And with this, I will stop there. And would like to basically hand over to my colleague, part of the mobility and autonomous vehicle team in DigiConnect, Bianca and Stephanie. They both work on Boost EDIC and EDIC MNTEL, and they will give us the link that Max was mentioning with the ADACities Secretariat, and why basically there is a good and important role for the Boost EDIC, and later on probably EDIC MNTEL to play in the initiative. Bianca, Stephanie, with this, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Max. Thank you, Vali, for taking us to the vision of ADACities through the call for expression of interest. As Vali mentioned, I'm part of the mobility team working on ADACities, amongst others, but more prominent role on the EDIC MNL and the Boost EDIC, which is supporting the EDIC mobility and logistics. Now that we've heard what Max and Vali had to say, the natural question becomes, how can this initiative be supported and scaled over time? How can such an initiative be supported over time, and how can we avoid creating yet another standalone initiative operating in isolation from existing European structures? And this is where the potential synergies with EDIC, with the EDIC for mobility and logistics, and more specifically with the Boost EDIC, which, as I said before, is the project supporting the EDIC, become particularly interesting. ADACities and the EDIC for mobility and logistics are different initiatives, of course, but they share a number of common objectives. While ADACities focuses on urban deployment, many of the capabilities required to support such initiative already exist within the broader EDIC mobility and logistics ecosystem. Both initiatives share common objectives of bringing stakeholders together, supporting interoperability, fostering cross-border collaboration, and creating conditions for scalable mobility services, namely in cities, as far as we're concerned. Through its member state engagement, stakeholder networks, and governance structures, and of course, expertise in mobility data spaces, which is what interests us most here. Boost EDIC already provides many of the building blocks that a deployment-oriented initiative such as ADACities requires. This in turn creates a strong rationale for exploring how Boost EDIC could support ADACities by leveraging existing structures, as I said, expertise and communities, rather than creating entirely new support mechanisms. So firstly, Boost EDIC could contribute to the ecosystem building through its existing stakeholder networks and member state engagement activities. It can help bring together the communities needed to support autonomous mobility deployment across European cities. Secondly, it can support by knowledge and capacity building, which is definitely a need. Many cities are at different stages of readiness, preparedness. Sharing lessons learned, experiences, and best practices will be essential if we want to move from a limited number of pilots to broader deployment. Thirdly, Boost EDIC could facilitate matchmaking and collaboration between cities, mobility operators, technology providers, investors, and other relevant stakeholders. But perhaps most importantly, the Boost EDIC brings expertise in data governance and interoperability. And you will hear this over and over. Max mentioned it, data federation, data federation. Autonomous mobility services increasingly rely on access to trusted data, high quality data, and they also require interoperability across systems, organizations, and of course, borders. In this case, of course, EU borders, we're speaking about the EU. Through its work supporting the European mobility data space and the future EDIC for mobility and logistics, which will hopefully come into force next year, the Boost EDIC can help promote a common approach to data sharing and, again, the federation of mobility data across European cities. And this is particularly relevant as we move towards AI-enabled mobility services, of course, which depend on access to large volumes of high quality and trusted data. Ultimately, the objective is not simply to support individual deployments. The objective is to help create the conditions for scalable and replicable deployment across cities in the EU. And this is why we see Boost EDIC as a potential bridge between Europe's urban mobility data ecosystems and the next generation of autonomous mobility services in cities. We are still at an exploratory stage, but these examples illustrate the potential synergies between ADACities and the broader EDIC mobility and logistics ecosystem. And I would like to now, without further ado, hand over to Dr. Stephanie Federal, who will explain a bit more detail how Boost EDIC can help support ADACities, while also contributing to a European governance model for mobility data that enables what we just said before. Again, interoperability, exchange, and federation of the data needed to support AI-enabled AD driving. Stephanie is works at ACATEC, Dr. Stephanie Federal. She is part of the Boost EDIC project that supports the EDIC MNL. She's also part of the core group of the EDIC representing Germany. Stephanie, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Bianca, and for the introduction, and good morning to everyone. I'd like to provide you some background information on EDIC MNL as well as the support project Boost EDIC MNL. and why it provides an appropriate structure to support ADACities. So if we could go to the next slide, then I'd like to introduce to you the ADAC-ML, what it actually is. So the ADAC-ML is built to last. So it's a long-term institutional structure. So ADAC itself is an own legal entity founded by member states and approved by the European Commission. So an ADAC enables pooling of resources and efficient collaboration among member states in order to implement digital infrastructure. So this particular ADAC-ML will focus on the mobility and the sharing of mobility and logistics data, and it is expected to be established in the beginning of 2027. And the objectives of it are first-hand driving standardization. So standards are already there, they do exist. So the ADAC-ML rather focus on accelerating the deployment and adoption of common frameworks and standards for the sharing and use of data. And importantly, it ensures the sustainability of a common digital infrastructure for mobility and logistics data and services. As Max just mentioned it, for ADACities, data sharing is core, and this is also true for the ADAC-ML. In order to enable AI-driven solutions in mobility and logistics, for example, for autonomous mobility. And it's supposed to build on the EMDS, the European Mobility Data Space, which is a federated ecosystem of data platforms. If we could go to the next slide. Yes. And the ADAC-ML receives great political support across Europe. So as already mentioned, it is founded by member states. So this means the member states are really engaged and committed to the ADAC-ML. Currently, we have 6 committed member states. This is Germany, where the seat will be, Italy, Latvia, Netherlands, Spain, and Sweden. And in addition, 11 member states are observing the work on the ADAC-ML. This means so they are following the discussions also for a long time so far and support our work. If we could go further. So as already mentioned, the Boost ADAC-ML is the support project of the ADAC-ML. It's a 4-year project which supports the establishment and the implementation of the ADAC-ML. What it exactly is, so as said, it's a 4-year project and we started in January 2026. In total, we are 25 partners within the project, and the project is coordinated by Connect from Netherlands, and there is an overall budget of 15 million euros. And as already mentioned, so it has strong political support, and in total 17 member states are involved in the ADAC-ML, but of course also in the work of the Boost ADAC-ML, and in particular the 6 committed member states. And what is the exactly aim of the Boost ADAC-ML? So we define a strategic roadmap, which means we are currently in a process of identifying priority areas in the field of mobility and logistics. And with that, we would like to focus on specific fields and also, of course, involve the relevant stakeholders and align with the relevant stakeholders, initiatives and projects in the field. And we would like to create a coordinated roadmap to work together. And in addition, we already started or almost also finished the work on a gap analysis to identify the gaps in the existing data and service infrastructures. And another core activity, actually kind of the heart of the project, are the support of the cross-border use cases. So approximately 10 million of the 50 million go into the deployment of cross-border use cases, which will be launched within in 2 open calls, and the first one will be published end of the year, and the goal is the financial support in order to test innovative data sharing solutions. And we also established a knowledge hub, which means this is an information exchange platform, so the project will also provide guidance, proven tools and best practices for the ecosystem to have access to that. And to the next slide, please. And why we think Boost ADAC-MNL, the ADAC-MNL can support ADACities. So we think the Boost ADAC-MNL could serve as an operational bridge to immediately support ADACities development, and it can be connected to the future ADAC-MNL. So Bianca already emphasized the different points, but I like to re-emphasize again so that ADACities can profit and benefit from the stakeholder ecosystem. As already mentioned, we have a strong member state commitment and engagement within the ADAC-MNL, combined with the broad stakeholder engagement of the consortium partners, but also beyond the wider mobility and logistics ecosystem. In addition, importantly, there is a strategic fit. So ADACities aligns with the broader objectives of the ADAC-MNL, which, emphasizing again, data sharing is the core of it. So on cross-border data access, interoperability, and trusted data sharing in the mobility and logistics system in Europe. And the ADAC-MNL provides a European governance framework, which is backed up by member states, and it also involves relevant stakeholders in the ecosystem in order to establish this common digital infrastructure for data sharing. And finally, I'd like to emphasize also again the cross-border use cases. So the Boost ADAC-MNL will provide a concrete deployment environment in which innovative data sharing solutions can be tested and also applied. And this could, for example, include the field of autonomous mobility. So Max called it a win-win situation, and we also believe it creates a unique opportunity for Boost ADAC-MNL and ADACities to mutually benefit from the shared expertise from this existing structures actually, and aligned future activities to accelerate the development. So that's from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stephanie, for this insightful input. Thank you for being with us. I will now hand off to Veli back to continue with the next session.
Indeed, thank you very much, Bianca and Steffi, for this extensive overview and the link. And with this, I would like actually to start now the panel with the colleagues who have and are still part of all this experience, and with whom we work. What you can see on this slide are basically their faces, and I'm happy that they can be all in the room here, but they will join us in a few minutes. Margarita is also here, although not sitting on the podium, and Jared also. Hi. This panel is about the enabling ecosystem. Max already mentioned quite a lot about the links between what we are doing and the rest of the Commission. However, the building blocks of the entire European approach to mobility and autonomous vehicle is quite a complex one. And sometimes when presenting and not being the drafters, we tend to oversimplify. So I think that the best thing would be to hear from the drafters and thinkers behind the different policies in the Commission and initiatives, where we stand on different approaches and how we are bringing synergies together when it goes to autonomous driving, from research to deployments in the different cycles and across the different sectors and policy areas in the Commission. So I would like to start actually by handing the floor to Mohamed, who will be explaining to us the type approval and the work that colleagues in DG Grow are doing. So Mohamed, up to you.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So my name is Mohamed Brahmi. I'm from DG Grow. We are working on mainly type approval regulations in the field of connected and automated vehicles. So today we will give you an overview of current activities also and how we serve the different initiatives. But as a reminder, we would like also to remind that the work which we are doing on the regulations and also the testbed initiative is a part of the automotive action plan from last year. That means this is our starting point. And in there, we see three pillars or three main aspects which we are working on. First, we are working on boosting the regulatory framework with rules on unlimited series. So you will see later on what does it really mean. And also the testbed initiative. So it's a big pillar there. And the goal is to boost single market driving for automation through harmonized rules for testing and deployment. But let's start first with the overview of the regulations, the different regulations for different levels of automated driving, which we are working on. So we have the first, the L2 regulation. We call it DCAS regulation, driver control assistance system. This is also known under L2 plus. L2++, sometimes also called, and it's also extremely important also for the industry, especially for the, let's say, for the classic OEMs. There is a big interest in such systems, and we see it also, or some stakeholders even see it as an enabler for higher automation level. And because newer systems go in the direction of point-to-point navigation in cities, which are still based on this regulation. Next, we have the L3 regulation. So L3 is the conditional automated driving. That means where the vehicle can drive by itself in certain conditions, but where still a driver is needed to take over when needed. And then last but not least, also the most important regulation for us is the regulation for L4. But what you see here is the EU regulation. So the two first regulations are UN regulations, where we from the European Commission and GRC heavily contribute to drafting these regulations. But the third regulation, which you see here, the 1426, is a purely EU regulation. And later on, you will see the reason why we have the EU regulation there. The EU regulation, the 1426 for L4, was issued already in 2022. And the aim was to enable the European industry as soon as possible to be able to deploy such systems. Although this regulation has some limitations, which are, in that case, it's limited to certain use cases and also limited to series limitation. That means maximum 1,500 vehicles per year. But then at the same time, so as I said, we are working on different streams. So on EU NEC level, but also on EU level. And our goal is to, at some point, to merge or to converge. And what you see in the upper side is the EU level stream. That means we are working, we issued the regulation in 2022. And a few months ago, we also, as it was cited in the automotive action plan, we had to work on the removal of the small series scheme. And this is what we have done, starting with the use case of the automated valet parking. So we have introduced a new amendment, which would make the type approval of L4 systems for the use case of automated valet parking without this series limitation. This we have done already. And this requires a lot of work. It's not just a simple amendment, but it requires a lot of work. And the work also, which is needed there, you will see that we need it also at UNEC level, because at the end, we have to make the whole type approval framework fit for ADS. That means we have to screen all the existing regulations and see whether they are still applicable as they are for automated driving systems, or we have to change things. think about all the provisions where we have a driver. In the case of autonomous driving systems, we have to change this, and this is what we have done. And as we said, we were contributing strongly to the global UN regulation, and I can proudly say that it has been positively voted yesterday and approved yesterday in the WP29. So the UNR and the GTR, that means the UN regulation and the global technical requirements, they were voted yesterday, and they will enter into force 6 months later. And one of the precondition of this was also is what you see at the bottom is the amending around 100 regulations to make the whole type of approval framework fit. This is what we have done, and we have to do this in time so that it can be approved. And this is what happened yesterday. Last point which I would like to touch upon is the testbed initiative. The testbed initiative has also two pillars or two main aspects. I will be focusing here a little bit on the regulatory aspect. In the testbed initiative, we have mainly two work streams. One work stream working on the regulatory aspects, and one work stream working on deployments. For the regulatory aspects, our goal is to first, our basis are the existing regulations. So we will start from the existing regulations, especially now when we have this harmonized regulations. But we will, of course, see how to further work on these regulations in terms of interpretations, in terms of guidelines, to make the application and the implementation of these regulations possible. We will also touch or beyond the regulations on vehicle level, we will also look at the regulations for the operation of the vehicles on the road, because currently this is the bottleneck. So the bottleneck is not the regulation at the vehicle level, that means for the type approval, but for the operation of the vehicle itself. And this is what we will be looking at in this in the testbed initiative in the work stream 1, working on the regulatory aspects. And our goal at the end is not only to develop something to make the deployment within the testbed initiative possible, but we also are targeting producing something which is also sustainable for later, for the future, so that the industry in general can use this and easily deploy automated driving systems. And just last point, we also would like to make our deliverables, our results. We would like to make them available as a platform for all the interested parties to be able to use this also for the regular approval of the automated driving systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohamed. With this, I would like to pass over to Jacob, who will walk us through the work also done by DigiMove, and also in close relationship with Grow and other colleagues on the testbed initiative and what relates to their work in terms of mobility and is relevant for the ADACities initiative. Please, over to you, Jacob.
Thanks. Building a bit on what Mohamed said, the scope of the test beds is not only on the regulation side, but also wants to see vehicles on the road. So in the end, we want to allow for quicker deployment of vehicles and indirectly to quicker development there as well. Our main discussion partners are the authority side. So for all the type approval related discussions and also about national regulation, of course, our main counterparts are the member states. But to get the vehicles on the road, we need regions, and also to do good discussions and do good regulations, we will need the regional knowledge. And that means we foresee a relevant aspect a relevant role for the regions in the testbed initiative. And you can see here a bit a cluster like you saw with the pioneers and the network cities in the ADACities approach. We do want to see front runners and the one interested. If you're looking at the front runners, we primarily again look at the decision takers for regulatory permitting aspects, Betriebsbereichserlaubnis in German or system approval in the French regulation, but also at the people deciding about which vehicle to buy, which service to offer. So public transport authorities on the one hand, but also whoever else is included in those discussions. We hope to see mainly peer learning there. We do not think that we have the sole wisdom at the European level and can pour it out to everyone, but we will need to learn, and we will need you to learn from each other. The main difference on the deployment is that we actually look at big vehicles as well. You see it in bold there. We look at trucks and buses. We really want to see a logistic use cases. Why? Because on the one hand, the possibility to actually have a viable business case is quite good. Truckers are difficult to find in the futures. And also because it is a different setup. The trucks will be more on the higher road networks, and it's important to gain experience there as well. And we know from all the public transport authorities that buses are an important part in any mobility system in European towns. So in addition to the use cases we see in other cities, these two are there as well. If you work on them, reach out and come to us or come to the colleagues working in other cities and they will tell you to come to us. If you're not yet a front runner, so if you don't have any concrete deployment plans, but you're interested as well, happy if you flag it, we will see that all our network building activities, our ecosystem building activities between all the different DGs and projects will align so that in the end, you don't have to be part of 3 projects, but we need to know about you, of course, that you are a PTA or also a public transport operator that is keen, and we try to keep you in the loop because the hope is that the peer learning we can see with the front runners is one we can afterwards all learn from. So any other interested city or region can gain that experience and in the end be quicker in their own deployment than in the near future. Thanks. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jacob. So with this, I would like to pass over to another colleague from DG Move. We walk us actually through what we call the sumps, but I'll leave to you to explain to us in the audience what exactly we want to achieve and how we see integration. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. My name is Anna Marie. I represent the unit on urban mobility and innovation. We are also part of the testbeds team from the DigitalEU side, but we are contributing with urban mobility expertise. So I'm actually going to address the point that Max has mentioned, where he said we need to merge the industrial EU agenda with the cities agenda. So I will talk about the cities agenda. And at the EU level, we address this issue with our EU urban mobility framework, where we actually mentioned that automation should be well aligned and integrated into sustainable urban mobility plans, so that the cities work on their objectives, and then it becomes much more stronger tool, automation for the SAM's objectives. It is especially important, and I want to stress that it's the first time that we actually have the requirements coming from the regulation, which is the revised TNT regulation that makes 431 urban nodes update or adapt the SAMs, which means that this is going to be the actual policy framework supported at the EU level. And whatever we are going to do with the cities has to be integrated in this framework. And the guiding principle from SAMs is that AVs should be deployed as a part of their urban mobility system. And of course, they have to complement and strengthen the public transport. And this is our main message, that scaling automated mobility is not really about the technology, but it's about the systemic approach to it. And so it has to be aligned with local mobility planning and aligned with the city's mobility objectives. And that's it from my side.
So thank you very much. Now we will have with us Margherita, who can explain this. I'm just seeing what yeah, we have one.
Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely,
So because
Margherita.
we are together, so.
Absolutely, with pleasure. I'm happy to have you both, given your very always timely and effective
Tell me if it's
and effective contribution. Thank you, Stefan. So, Margherita, before you start, just a few words from me, just to put this a little bit from the perspective of the work and questions that we're asking ourselves, and also to introduce something which I think still requires some clarifications, which is about actually what we mean by innovation measures under AI and how this fits together with our sectoral regulation. And thank you again, colleagues, for your so fruitful and reliable support throughout the drafting.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed to give us the opportunity to present what innovation measure we have under the AI Act. My name is Margherita Corrado. I'm a legal officer at the AI office. I'm here with my colleague Jeroen, who is a technological specialist. So today, hopefully we will be able to cover both the technological and legal aspect of the AI Act. So as you all know, the AI Act follow a risk-based approach, and so it regulates high-risk AI systems to ensure the adoption of trustworthy AI solutions. And this includes also AI systems which are safety component to regulated products such as vehicles. In August 2028, now that we have the Omnibus Compromise Agreement, the requirements of high-risk AI system incorporating such products, so incorporated also within vehicles, will be reflected in the type approval regulations. And the requirements for high-risk AI system includes, for example, risk management, data quality, and cybersecurity, among others. And to comply with this requirements, the AI Act includes several measures for testing. So we have testing within the framework of AI regulatory sandboxes and testing outside the framework of AI regulatory sandboxes. So testing within AI regulatory sandboxes is under the supervision of the competent authorities. As basically the rationale behind it is that to allow providers to test in the case of vehicles, AI components, which are part of regulated products under a protected environment, so the provider is not punished for any mistakes that are committed during the testing with, under the AI regulatory sandbox framework. And the idea is to indeed foster the acceleration of AI system in the market. Then we have real-world testing outside the framework of regulatory sandboxes, which is now it's available also for vehicles after the Omnibus Compromise Agreement. And this is subject to specific safeguards. And basically, it's up to the member state to establish the framework under which this testing should take place. But it's very important to highlight that the rationale is to facilitate compliance with the high-risk provision of the AI Act. And subject, of course, to specific safeguards and subject to a plan, a sandbox plan, which is basically an agreement between the provider and prospective providers and the authority. And so this is basically what we have. And yes, I was very brief, but of course, if there are any kind of like question, we're happy to answer them.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much. With this, I would like to pass over the floor to our colleague from DigitalEU, Marjana, who walk us through SICAM and the work done by RTD on aspects related also to the ADACities. Thank you, Marjana.
Thank you. Thank you for including us as well. Indeed, from DigitalEU side, so on research and innovation side, we have had already several activities going on. For instance, in the most recent framework program, which is Horizon Europe, we have SICAM partnership. So SICAM stands for Connected Cooperative Automated Mobility. We have many projects running under this framework. You can see them on the screen. So you see the structure into 7 clusters in the round circles. So that's the structure, thematic structure of the SICAM partnership. And all around you can see the linked projects. So definitely my message here would be that whatever we are doing next, we shouldn't start from scratch, but we should already build on what is existing out there. So for instance, I would just highlight some points that are, I believe, very useful for next steps that we have here in front of us. For instance, in the project Synergies, we started with some work on a collection of scenarios for training algorithms. In the SIC Ambassador project, that is a coordination and support action of the whole SICAM partnership, they are in charge of the knowledge base that has a lot of materials, a lot of knowledge there. We also have overview of national regulatory frameworks that, for instance, colleagues from the testbeds have been using. We recently included their global SICAM observatory together with the Joint Research Center that shows the different deployments of SICAM level 3 and above happening in the world, including different components and companies involved in those deployments. And the SIC Ambassador is also preparing a lot of new materials because it's a running project. So a lot on materials for deployers, for actual implementers. So for public authorities, there will be more and more materials coming out of this project. Then with regards to the urban SICAM, we have among the demonstration projects, Project Ultimo, that is looking already at SICAM in cities, however, at pilot level. We have also 2 remote operations related projects, Remote Ready Move and Accept Remote, that just started, but are looking at remote operations and how this should be organized, as it's not fully standardized for the moment. So this will also be important for cities, I suppose. And there will still be some upcoming projects. One, for instance, on federated data spaces for SICAM pilots and projects that will be starting right after the summer. So another point, we are not yet finished with current Horizon Europe. Actually, we are coming to a culmination point with the SICAM partnership. According to the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda of the SICAM partnership, which was set up from 2021 to 2027 as current Horizon Europe, the whole idea was to build different technologies that will then be used in a final large-scale demonstration. So we are getting to that. Right now we have a coordination and support action running to prepare for this large-scale demonstration. And we have an open call for projects to actually run this final culmination point large-scale demonstration of the SICAM partnership. The call for projects is now open until October, and we provide there 100 million euro from the Commission side of funding, hoping that it will be doubled with another 100 million from the private side. Here we are expecting this large-scale project starting around mid next year.
It is a bit broader than what ADACities is addressing, because we have included there the 3 different domains, so pass cars, public transport, and freight and logistics. It is still a bit on technology development to address the remaining edge cases. We are still within Horizon Europe Research and Innovation. It will also be about the data gathering to train algorithms, but it's a bit different than what we have been doing so far with pilots in the CCAM field. We will also be looking at scaling up to fleet deployments and hoping that some deployments, or most of them, are remaining in place after the project will finalize. So really towards the market uptake of solutions. And just a brief information that, yeah, we are not stopping with this. Of course, we are now working towards the new multi-annual financial framework and Horizon Europe 2028-2034. There we have an expert group set up on European Union research and innovation for the automotive sector, also a bit of as a result of the automotive action plan from last year. There the group is working for now they mapped the R&I needs of the whole automotive sector. So this is broader as well than just CCAM. It's also looking at electrification of automotive and so on. And with this expert group, we will be working towards the potential new programs for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Marjane, for this comprehensive overview. With this, basically, I would like to pass over the floor to Stefan. And before I fully give him the floor, I would like, however, to mention that without Stefan, nothing of what we are saying today would not exist on ADACities, because Stefan is the main driver, a thoughtful and reliable colleague, but brain behind also many of the aspects that we're doing under ECAVA. So Stefan, I know you don't like this, but I need to say it. And with this, I'll give you the floor to put all this into perspective. And thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Veli, for the nice words. So I'll speak very briefly and quickly about ECAVA. Most of the constituency here knows ECAVA, and many of you have probably been in our sessions the past few days. So to at least keep your attention for the next 3 minutes, I've tried to make all my slides AI generated so that you have a different visual design. So what is ECAVA? Why do we have an industrial alliance? The idea of an industrial alliance is that it's not a decision-making body, it's not a funding body, it's really a steering and advisory forum, that we make sure that we have a strong industrial focus and a strategic orientation in the activities we drive across different funded projects, across different collaboration initiatives, so that instead of, let's say, distributing projects that don't communicate with each other, we have a strong and coherent focus and also industrial buy-in so that we can reach serious development and deployment. Why it matters to have an industrial alliance on connected and autonomous vehicles, several aspects, but of course we do believe that there's a high safety component and added value for EU citizens, for EU roads. We provide, it can unlock the potential to have better mobility options. The investment in European solutions developed in Europe for the European market and for the global market, of course, has a strong relevance to our industrial sovereignty and competitiveness. And lastly, also jobs, since the automotive sector accounts for nearly 13% of the job force in Europe. So very quickly, what is ECAVA? ECAVA is structured across 4 broad buckets. On the highest level, we have a steering committee, which is composed of EU OEMs and leading suppliers and mobility platforms that provide a strategic direction and that meet on a quarterly basis to review and also take decisions on where their line should go. On the second level, we have working groups that are chaired between different co-chairs from industrial representatives and from the research domain. I'll get into that in a bit more second, but this is really the engine room and where most of the work in ECAVA happens. Third, we then have an international dimension, which is the forum, of which we had our first over the last 2 days, which also allows to discuss international issues and international partnerships with like-minded partners to promote innovation, but also collaboration on a global scale. And lastly, the Secretariat, where we had a call this year and which will lead the operations of ECAVA going forward. Lastly, I just also like to highlight the link between ECAVA and the tech sovereignty package that was announced 3 weeks ago. In that, of course, ECAVA's activities fully align both with announcements in the CHIPS Act of really stimulating demand-side measures for chips, where automotive is a key vertical, accelerating the rollout of cloud and AI, as mentioned in the Cloud and AI Development Act, and of course, promoting open source ecosystems, where particularly on hardware, such as RISC-V, and also on software-defined vehicles, we really see a strong European push and momentum. The 4 working groups, as mentioned, cover 4 broad thematic buckets. On a high level, on the left-hand side, software-defined vehicles really focuses on a bottom-up approach of developing modular and interoperable building blocks that can be integrated into next-generation series development. And also making sure that we use, for example, tool chains, AI-enabled tool chains in the SDV development process to increase the productivity and to counter talent shortages. On automotive hardware, instead of focusing on one monolithic European chip, the idea is to really focus on smaller, specialized, and interchangeable chiplets. So the mixing and matching of semiconductor dies. And here, 3 pillars that are really focused on in the hardware is on sovereign processors, so RISC-V open source architectures, specialized high-performance computing and AI chiplets, and then also the integration of chiplets. The 3rd working group on AI data and the AD stack focuses on maximizing potential to pool data for the automotive sector, use it to build foundational models, and then also move towards building autonomous driving stack. And lastly, on autonomous vehicle deployment, as mentioned by several speakers, Europe has real need for action here. So in this working group, the discussion is both with industrial representatives, with city representatives, with member state representatives to promote the deployment of scale of autonomous driving in Europe. So I'll just close with a few words about the event that we had over the past few days with over 300 participants, including strong participation from the European side, but also from international participants. The forum was a great opportunity to exchange information, to identify areas where Europe can collaborate, but also areas where Europe can win in a rapidly evolving ecosystem. So a few thoughts, reflections, and takeaways across the discussions we had. There is a lot of potential, particularly considering Europe's strong engineering strengths and the foundation to build upon this, particularly as we see how AI is transforming the speed, but also the way in which software engineering is being done. Concrete examples from deployments of autonomous vehicles in cities that we heard also demonstrate the momentum and the willingness of cities to scale. And I think here the link to ADACities is very important, where we aim to build such a community and network of both pioneer cities, but then also cities that can follow those developments. Global partnerships are developing. We see, of course, a lot of European OEMs and tier 1 suppliers, particularly leveraging non-EU suppliers for their AD solutions. However, this is also important for us to stress that European firms should assert their role in such partnerships and not be delegated to a junior partner in those roles. In terms of call for actions, representatives particularly highlighted the need for more harmonized approval rules, targeted funding, and particularly strategic funding instead of trying to catch all aspects with public funding, and also particularly focus on deployment. So as a result, ECAVA as an advisory forum is a uniquely positioned body to take these discussions and developments to the next step, and particularly provide a strategic orientation and focus on where to play and how to win for the European automotive sector. Thank you very much, and I hand back to Willi.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for giving us this helpful and definitely more than necessary perspective of why and where ADACities come from, in addition of being an AI strategy flagship. With this, I would like to hand over to Buddy. Buddy is our colleague from the Directorate of DG Connect dealing with cybersecurity. And as Stefan also mentioned, not only because of AI and data-related issues, but because of all the context in which we currently evolve. Our colleagues from the Cybersecurity Directorate have quite a lot to do, and especially in our sector, they have come with some work and risk assessment for connected vehicles. So, Woody, please, if you can walk us through the most relevant parts for us.
Right. Thank you very much for having me today. I see that we're a bit over time, so I'll just give you a very high level nutshell overview of what we did on the risk assessment on connected and automated vehicles. I'm afraid that I didn't use AI for my slides, so don't expect anything as visually stunning as the previous ones. So the risk assessment, where did it come from? It is from the NIS Cooperation Group. This is a member state driven group that under NIS2 can conduct risk assessments and on cybersecurity, and connected vehicles was one of them. So what happens there is that the member states, they send delegates to this group together with the Commission and ENISA. They then identify experts at a national level, and through that, they conduct the risk assessment, which took about a year to complete. So the assessment itself identified 107 risks, of which 14 were in the highest impact category. One of the findings was also that many of the risks that were identified were actually already addressed by current type approval rules. It was very closely scrutinized. Though gaps exist, especially for some non-technical risks, and there are the two main concerns, which are remote manipulation and espionage. And in relation to that, there were 4 critical asset groups that were identified. So you have vehicle control systems, processing and decision-making systems, communication and connectivity systems, and cloud and backend systems. And as a side note, many experts also flag charging infrastructure as having subpar cybersecurity. So this is an area for follow-up. The public report, as you can see on the slide, can be found online. It's available to everyone. You just need to follow the link. So I'll quickly go through the main recommendations. It's quite a lot of them, but maybe I can just summarize it quickly for you. So the recommendations are organized by who is supposed to follow them up. So first we have, of course, the European Commission. And then recommendation number 1 asks the Commission to identify together with the member states proportionate measures to de-risk EU supply chains from high-risk suppliers, especially where it pertains to those 4 categories that I just mentioned. And the second recommendation is that the Commission develops guidelines for data localization of sensitive non-personal data based on reciprocity. And the third one is that it conducts a follow-up research to look into the charging infrastructure issues that are there, which were technically not part of the scope, but it surfaced time and again as an issue. Then for the member states, it is recommended that they apply the recommendations set out in the ICT Supply Chain Security Toolbox. This is another document that is publicly available and is supposed to help member states with protecting their critical infrastructure. It was also drafted by the NIS Cooperation Group. The second recommendation there is to use the EU Vulnerability Database. The third one is to consider sharing information on incidents in connected vehicles. During the process, we noticed that it is not so easy to find this information. There's not a fixed exchange. So for example, this can be done through the CSERT network or the Cyclone groups that are made precisely for this kind of information sharing. Then, so one missing. Oh, interesting. There's a slide missing. Yeah, no worries. Just quickly pull it up. It's actually the most interesting for you. Because we have also recommendations for connected vehicles manufacturers. So there are 3. The first one is to consider risks identified when implementing and maintaining robust risk management systems. Yeah, but I'm not in the meeting at the moment. You can maybe share the slides afterwards, no? And they also have the links.
You can still explain it to us. I think
Yes.
it makes sense now.
The second one is to harden cloud infrastructures, as cloud was a prominent area that was identified. And the third one is to improve the provision of information to consumers about processing of vehicle-generated data, which was actually already flagged in a Commission study from 2023. And then finally, there's a single recommendation for the operators of charging infrastructure, which is to swiftly implement the cybersecurity risk management measures set out in Article 21 of the NIS 2 directive. And that's it from my side. I suppose that we can maybe share the slides afterwards. Or...
Yes, absolutely. I just wanted to actually before closing also ask you in terms of a little bit of a timeline actually, because yesterday you had a number of questions, in terms of cyber. Is there any planning related to this? Because I have received in some personal chats a number of questions in relation to this. Of course, I know that there are not many things that sometimes we can share, but probably if there is whatever timing you can share with us.
So at the moment, there is no concrete timeline. What is happening is that the Commission, ENISA, and the member states are together looking into how can we follow up on these recommendations and what additional data do we need to come up with, especially for the first two recommendations, something that is proportionate and effective overall. But no, there is no concrete, I cannot give you a very specific deadline.
Thanks very much, Buddy. I think now this is clear this is clear to everybody. So thanks for the clarification. With your intervention, actually, we're heading towards the end of this panel, whose main aim was to give a comprehensive overview of actually what is the enabling environment that they're trying to put in place for autonomous driving deployment to become effective and to scale in Europe. This is quite a regulatory policy oriented overview, but we will see that the second panel, which will be completely different and bringing in different perspective, but I will introduce it after the break. But before the break, there are a number of questions, not many in YouTube, but that we have received through different channels. So there is one actually for our colleagues working on AI and on the omnibus, which is basically what will exactly this change in terms of rolling out autonomous driving deployment in Europe, if we go with the measures that you have proposed. Margarita, Joren, can you take this question? Of course, we can also complement on our side.
So the news from the omnibus is basically that before testing for high-risk AI system, so this is also the case of when high-risk AI is a component of a regulated product, like in the case of vehicles, it was available only for a system in Annex 3, which is basically biometrics, critical infrastructure, so on and so forth. While with the AI omnibus, the idea was to give key sectors, such as, for example, indeed automotive, also the possibility of benefiting from testing in real-world conditions outside the framework of the regulatory sandboxes. So the AI Act doesn't, for our system in Annex 1, Section B. And for these, where vehicles indeed are included. And for these, we have indeed an ad hoc article now, which allows such testing. But of course, this is subject to specific safeguards, because we know that testing can come with the risk for safety and fundamental rights. The AI Act doesn't set, is not strict in terms of like how this testing should take place, but it states that minimum requirements that should be including within the framework set by the member states. And these requirements include, for example, the sandbox plan, which is indeed this agreement with the provider or the prospective providers. The idea is, as I was stressing before, is to facilitate compliance with the risk requirements. So the reason why we have this testing is because to facilitate compliance. Also given because, as we all know, The Annex 1 is divided by the sector who follow the national legislative framework legislation and the sector that are not follow the national framework legislation, whereby the high risk requirements should be integrated within the sectoral legislation, such as the case of vehicles. I look around to see whether my colleagues here want to add something. But I hope this answered the question on what is new within the omnibus.
Thank you very much for this. Then I had a question in relation, basically, also to the business case. Max, I'm thinking of you addressing this question on the business case for our industry under ADACities. So probably you can further specify some of the aspects that you have already provided in your presentation.
Well, it's relatively simple. At the moment, the OEMs provide 2, 3, 4 vehicles to a city. Obviously, that's not a business case. That's a loss because it costs a lot of money, not only the vehicles, but also the support staff. I've recently visited some of that, and I know it's an enormous effort. I also understand that they would be ready for some services, and but to reach scale, they now would need the money to have more vehicles in the cities, and also to have all the operational infrastructure around. For example, on autonomous driving, you need the operations, some central office that takes over when the vehicle stops. Yeah, like I went to one city and I had the case. There was a construction area, and the vehicle was told to follow the traffic regulation. So it couldn't pass a white line, yeah, because it would have had to pass a white line to get by that obstacle. But traffic regulation says no. So some operator, in that case, the safety driver, came in. But you need this operator somewhere, and you need this infrastructure. So that means for the vehicle providers, the OEMs, they need critical mass. Otherwise, they will never get there. It's too expensive. They need to see how to sell enough vehicles at some point, so it becomes a case for them. And we have been told the numbers are very different, and don't take it now exactly that number, but people from the OEMs say 5,000, 10,000 before it doesn't even start. So and we also know that the ones who tested in other parts of this world, they also do not necessarily make business yet with that. But if we don't get to this scale, we will never make business with that. So that the business case really is to get to scale, and also in this getting to scale, to have the same conditions for these vehicles, not to have the robot taxi for Hamburg, the robot taxi for Paris, the robot taxi for Barcelona, and all have different conditions. It's not only the type approval or pre-type approval, it's also the local conditions. I understand that all the cities or regions have special local conditions for deployment, and I think they have to, in a way, harmonize. Otherwise, they will never get there, the OEMs, if they have to satisfy all of them individually. And also, I must say, some of them said, then we have no interest, because it will never become a business case.
Okay, thank you very much, Max, for this clarification. Then I would also like to ask, I have not seen on my end any other questions. I would also want to ask the colleagues in the room whether there is something they would still like to clarify before we going into a break. No. Okay, so with this, we'll pause for a few minutes, and we'll be back at, let's say 5:12, because we're a little bit behind the schedule, and we'll continue with the rest. Would it be okay for our colleagues? Yes.
Past 12.
Yeah? I said so. Great. So 12. Thank you. Excuse me, colleagues, everybody, it appears that there is a micro that is switched on. Can I please all ask you that you have a look to your mics and ensure that they're switched off? Thank you.
When they go sit down, that's value, but this is take a word. Everything I use it. So, we'll try this, we'll try.
Hello, everybody. Do you hear me? Peter. Hello, Peter.
Hi, Joost. Yeah, we hear and we see you.
Yeah, hello, hola.
Hi.
Buenos días.
Hi,
Hello.
nice to meet you all.
Hello.
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 Hi.
Could you also hear me, Adriana?
Oh, good. I think I'm not sure if we're broadcasting right now. People are coming back from a break, but it's good to have you all here. I'll wait for Velimira's cue to get started with the session.
Hi, also testing that I can be heard and seen.
Yes, hi, Mina.
Hi.
Okay, just 1 or 2 more minutes and we get started. Thank you for your patience.
Good afternoon to everybody. So we are back after this short break in order to engage now in discussions around how we do to scale autonomous mobility, what already exists, what we still need to do, what is the perspective of different partners, what is the perspective of cities, of industry. And in relation to that second part, there will be also the possibility that you ask questions through Slido. You can see the code on the screen, and both in terms of figures identification and the barcode and the QR code. And the questions, you will be able actually to listen to the answers during the last 15 minutes of the discussion. So for this second part, I think there is, however, an issue. Probably my colleagues, Vasi, would you mind please just update the page, because I see that we're missing one slide with the chair of the meeting. It doesn't show. Okay, so it will be with my apologies then to our chair, Adriana. So the second part of the discussion.
Very good. Thank you very much, Belimira. And happy to introduce myself. My name is Adriana Diaz, and I am the Innovation Director at EIT Urban Mobility. So EIT Urban Mobility is an initiative of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, EIT. This is a body of the European Union. And our mission is to accelerate the transition to more sustainable, inclusive, and resilient urban mobility by bringing together the cities, the industry, research, and startups. So we support innovation, education, and well, our aim is to help scale solutions that improve how people and goods move across cities. So this is an amazing opportunity for us to contribute to that as we see autonomous mobility as part of that transition. Before I move on, I will ask my panelists and speakers to please mute themselves. The camera is okay to keep it on, but maybe we close the mics until it is your turn to speak. So this morning, we have learned about the enabling environment being developed by the European Commission. So autonomous mobility moves from pilots to sustainable deployment. We've heard a great deal about the technology, the innovation, the regulatory landscape, and also about the opportunities that are ahead and the cooperation, the collaboration needed for those opportunities to result into deployment. So it is a great privilege for me to moderate this session, in which we will now look at the wider ecosystem. So it's an opportunity for people that are interested in applying to the call of interest to get a sense of what is out there, what are the experiences upon which we can build. Because rather than asking if autonomous mobility will happen in Europe, I think now in this discussion, we explore how we can move from the successful pilots that we have been doing in Europe to deployment at scale, and how ADACities can play a role in making that possible. So we have a lot of innovation. We've heard from different parts of the Commission about the support that comes in the cohesion and the let's say coherence in the different initiatives behind this. But now the challenge is, how do we turn the experience, the know-how, the research that has been already been done into integrated operational mobility services that create actual value for the cities, for public transport, for logistics, for the industry, and ultimately for our citizens. So this is something that from EIT Urban Mobility is, let's say, a day-to-day reality. As we work with the cities, with the operators, we observe how deployment requires more than the vehicle. So we really need to consider operational capacity, regulatory understanding, appropriate procurement approaches, or beyond that, also public acceptance. So strong local partnerships are important to that, and beyond local European partnerships will be key for this to happen. So to help us explore this challenge, I'm delighted to be joined by an excellent and very rich panel that represents the voice of cities, technology providers, mobility platforms, and the wider ecosystem. The session will be sort of divided in two parts. The first part, we will get started with a few aggregated views from associations that are representing different players. And after that, we will have more like a moderated panel with representatives from the city and technology provider and mobility platforms. We'll build on the first part to sort of discuss then how to move into scaling autonomous mobility. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Laura Babillo from Police and to Peter Stellens from EuroCities, who will tell us a little bit about their joint charter on automated mobility in European cities and regions. So Peter, do you go first? Oh,
Yeah,
thanks very much. You go ahead.
yeah, many thanks, Adriana. And yeah, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Peter Stalens, and I'm leading the mobility team at EuroCities. So we are a network of 224 major European cities. And it's a pleasure for me and for Laura to be invited here to present the joint Polis and EuroCities Charter on Automated Mobility in European Cities and Regions. So I will start with a quick intro and highlight the first set of principles. And then Laura will present the second set of principles and she will provide a concluding summary. But maybe first I need to explain why we jointly developed the Charter together with our members. I have to insist, members who have been active in this domain already for many years. So I want to clearly state that European cities and regions see real potential in automated mobility. But as indeed we move from pilots to deployment, we need to make sure we're deploying the right services in the right places and for the right reasons. So the aim of the Charter is to set out a shared vision from cities and regions on how automated mobility can deliver real value for citizens and support Europe's broader mobility objectives and also objectives in terms of competitiveness. And we really believe that an initiative like ADACities can help in making that happen by bringing together the cities, the industry, the researchers and the policymakers to not only prepare the technologies and the vehicles, but also the urban environments where these services will operate. So let me quickly walk you through the first 5 principles of our joint charter. So starting with the first point, which is actually quite straightforward. We believe that deployment should be guided by clear public policy objectives. So we should start by asking what mobility challenges we're trying to solve with CCAM before deciding where and how to deploy automated mobility. For cities and regions, that means that we want to make sure that deployment supports broader goals such as sustainable mobility, accessibility, safety, and better use of public space. The second principle in our joint charter focuses on expected outcomes. So we want automated mobility to improve livability, accessibility, and safety in cities. If automated mobility is going to succeed, it needs to make a visible difference for citizens. It should help connect people to jobs, to education and services, and it should improve access to mobility for different user groups and contribute to safer transport systems. At the same time, it should also support the qualities that make European cities attractive places to live. That means cleaner mobility, less dependence on private cars, and continued support for walking, cycling, and other forms of mobility. So one of the strongest messages in the Charter is that automated mobility should strengthen public transport and not compete with it. We believe that public transport is the backbone of mobility in European cities and that automation offers opportunities to make it even stronger. So whether that happens through feeder services, through shared shuttles, to demand responsive transport, or eventually automated public transport operations, we should prioritize the use cases that improve coverage, efficiency, and service quality. Deployment should also deliver real societal and operational value. And hereby I arrived at the 4th principle of our joint charter. The charter calls for a focus on applications that help reduce congestion, improve efficiency of transport systems, and make better use of urban space. So as deployment accelerates, cities and regions want to see business models that are sustainable, well-regulated, and aligned with public policy objectives. And this brings us to the 5th principle. we believe that cities and regions need to play a leading role. Local authorities, cities and regions are responsible for managing public space, for integrating transport services, and for ensuring that mobility systems work effectively for their communities. And we believe that this is precisely where an initiative like ADACities can make an important contribution by helping to bridge the gap between innovation and implementation, and also ensuring that cities and regions are active partners in shaping the future of automated mobility. And I hope I'm within my 5-minute time limit, and I'm happy to hand over to Lara.
Thank you, Peter. So as a joint effort, and now it's a turn for Laura. If you could mute yourself, Peter, please.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Adriana, and good afternoon also from my side. So indeed, I'm Laura Babio Somoza. I work for Polis, another Brussels-based network of European cities and region, and I work there as the Smart Mobility Cluster Lead. I forgot to change the title in the slide. It's the same job, but we changed the name to make it more better reflect what we do. So I'll pick it up from there to indeed talk about the last 5 principles, our charter. As Peter emphasized, we created it together with our members directly, with their vision, understanding what are their needs. And the second half of the principles are more about how the automation would work in practice, or how we would want it. So Peter already left it in integration. That is really the focus of our 6th principle, where automated mobility should not develop as a standalone system. It has to operate within existing infrastructure, both physical and digital. And this means to be able to function safely under real conditions, and being integrated into traffic management, public transport, and emergency systems, which also means that cities cannot be treated as testing grounds, as playgrounds where the conditions are adapted to the technology and the industry. The technology needs to be able to operate in real urban environments as they are, and with the systems that already exist, which points also to something quite concrete: the need to continue investing in digitalization of infrastructure and mobility management systems, where we see a real added value for an initiative to ADACities, addressing a real need from cities and regions in Europe. There is also, as Peter mentioned, an implication for how cities manage this space. They're in charge of this. So if automation changes parking demand or traffic patterns, then cities and regions need to be in a position to manage those changes and decide how that space is used. Our 7th principle is about another key element: data. Cities cannot manage what they cannot see. Public authorities need access to relevant operational data to ensure safety, manage traffic, and enforce rules, while obviously addressing data protection, cybersecurity, and critical dependencies. Our 8th principle, there we also emphasize that deployment should build on Europe's existing strengths. European cities already have very good public transport system, a multimodal approach to how these systems are coordinated and orchestrated, and a strong public governance to back it all up. We have this already in place, and automation should reinforce that. We shouldn't look at models that do not represent what we already have and that constitutes our strengths. Our 9th principle is on the societal aspects. The charter places them at the center. Automation affects citizens, road users, public transport users, workers, public authorities, and communities more broadly. It's more than a technological shift, it's a societal shift, and cities and regions have a key role in engaging with these groups and anticipating changes in skills, employment, and working conditions. This requires for them to have the right capacity and resources, which we advocate for. And then finally, our last principle is on regulation, particularly for services like robotaxis and privately owned automated vehicles, where our cities ask for European and national frameworks to provide clarity on it, but also allowing cities and regions to manage the impact locally, to get the right competences in case there are negative impacts, such as congestions or empty kilometers traveled. cities can do this through tools such as access rules, pricing, geofencing, curb management, but they need to have the competences and they need to have the right framework to apply these rules. So overall, the message is about making sure that deployment is workable at the local level and it's aligned with our existing systems, and overall that it's driven by public value, by the alignment with the public mobility objectives that our cities and regions are already working hard on it. For any other city and region that it's in the call that is not part of our membership, we are looking for more cities and regions to endorse this. We have already a list that it's coming up, and that's really the way to make sure that this vision is shared, that we have a shared position at a moment where many of these decisions are still open, so that this deployment is supported, but also shaped in a way that reflects local realities and priorities. And that's it for me. Hope didn't take too long. Thank you.
No, thank you both, and very, very much on time. So, and thanks for setting the scene from the city perspective and highlighting the priorities and sort of the must-haves for local authorities to be equipped for the changes ahead. Building on that, I will now like to turn to Ertico Joost van Tome to bring more like the broader ideas and industry perspective. Joost, if I can hand over to you.
Thank you, Adriana, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm here from Ertico ITS Europe. Very pleased to be part of this ecosystem. First of all, Ertico ITS Europe is a public-private partnership from the Commission. From 1991, we are now 35 years this year, having over 50 projects at the same time this year. And actually, I want to focus on three key elements for ADACities, which we would like to highlight. One is fragmentation, I would like to highlight. The second is road infrastructure and assets. And the third element is data sharing. The first element is fragmentation. Not that we are fragmenting things here, but just to put into perspective the multitude of projects that we're going through. Stefan Dreyer is next to me. He's leading the Seek Ambassador project with DigitalEU, as Marcena has just mentioned. Seek Ambassador is the project actually in congruence here with ADACities for aligning stakeholders for connected and automated mobility. It's a very large consortium that we have the honor to coordinate with the Commission. It's a follow-up of the previous CSAs like FAME, Arcade, and Carter. And the purpose is actually to glue the ecosystem together to make things operational and deployed, as we just have mentioned. So what I offer is that we do that in good sync with other cities, of course, because Stefan, you have also a lot of cities involved and associations like police, for example, that we do it in sync. The lessons learned, we mutually reinforce each other in order not to have a derailing and siloification. So that's my first goal. There is some good work ongoing now in Seek Ambassador exactly on these topics. So let's bridge that with each other. Also important is to note the test beds that has been mentioned before by the colleagues of MOVE. The test beds is primarily led by member states. If I see the governance of the document that was signed in Luxembourg at the Council recently, it's mainly targeting member states who has then the obligation to see internally in the member state who should be involved. Definitely cities and regions, but I count on the member states to do that cascading. But it's important that we put them also in the boat, I have to say, in the same context here, in terms of governance of ADACities. So that's the first thing, fragmentation, let's avoid that. The second thing is road infrastructure. We always talk about vehicles, we always talk about data and AI, connected and automated driving and cooperative driving. We usually do not talk about the road operators. And in my backbone here in Ertico, I have one specific sector with all road authorities and ministries also as well. And they really asked me and urged me to be vocal in ECAVA and also all the work we do at ADACities and Boost as well, to be listened to and to be part of this ecosystem. I'm not saying that they should be formally part, but at least they are providing the road infrastructure, the assets, the lane markings, etc. Some OEMs even rely on a better infrastructure for helping automated driving with the good tools. So my plea is to get this also on board with us and CEDAR, our colleagues of CEDAR, with whom we have an excellent cooperation on the digital road management versus the physical road and asset management. So that's the second part as an addition. The third part is data sharing. That's a no-brainer, and with Nico and the team, we do that in Boost EDIC, of course, and many other projects. It's also good to make the link with other projects that are dealing with data for road sharing. For example, the federated CCAM space, the exchange platform, the new platform that we will start with, data fuse, CCAM, Sensoris, TNITS, all these platforms, and DFRS, data for road safety. So I just want to be constructive, proactive, and offer that as an opportunity to build bridges and to help each other, because I really want to see automation in cities in a good way, orchestrated way with the whole ecosystem. Thank you very much, and buenos dias, Adriana.
Muchas gracias, and thanks very much for keeping up the time. So as we move from this collaboration and links to other things that have been happening that are so relevant, one element that comes up in many of the conversations is data and the digital infrastructure that will sustain this. So it's not only about the vehicles, the operations, but about interoperable systems. So with that in mind, I would like to give the word to Nico Anten from Connect. He's a coordinator of Boost EDIC Mobility and Logistics. We learned a little bit about this initiative before today, but Nico, I welcome you to share your perspective as well.
Okay, thank you, Adriana, for this opportunity. My main point is that federated data exchange, it was mentioned already this morning, is not just a side issue for the ADACities. It is one of the practical conditions for moving from just interesting local pilots to a real European deployment pathway. And I think that autonomous driving in cities will not scale through just isolated pilots alone. Cities, industries, the infrastructure providers, and public authorities need to learn from each other. And they can do this by exchanging operational data, safety relevant insights, traffic and infrastructure data, but also the deployment experience and of course, knowledge about AI, validation, regulation, and procurement. But I think I don't have to explain to you that all of this data is quite sensitive. It may be commercially sensitive for companies, operational sensitive for cities. It can be relevant for cybersecurity and safety, and also there are, of course, public authority responsibilities on this respect. And that is also why this federated data exchange is so important, because this will not work with just one central database. We really need to think in terms of a federated data model. Data remains with the relevant parties where appropriate, but can be discovered, accessed, shared, and used under agreed conditions. And I think for ADACities, this is very concrete. The federated data exchange can help the city pilots learn from each other without forcing every city into the same model. And of course, I'm curious about the statement of cities towards my statement. It also can allow industry partners to contribute data and AI knowledge about protecting their own commercial interests. And it can give cities better access to data they need to manage autonomous mobility as part of their wider urban mobility system. And this also creates, I think, the link to the future EDIC for mobility and logistics. Data becomes quite relevant, and the EDIC MNL is being developed, and it was also mentioned by Stephanie Federer earlier, to support the common European data infrastructure and services for mobility and logistics. And the ADACities can become a beautiful but also very concrete deployment case in order to create and develop further this infrastructure. And it can help test what federated data exchange means in a real urban autonomous mobility operation for traffic management, already mentioned by earlier speakers, safety and validation, regulatory alignment, and that is part of this seminar, the scaling from pilot environments to the actual deployment. And we need, therefore, this mechanism. And this is also where the project, the Boost EDIC project, the ADACities Secretariat, and the future EDIC MNL can make a very practical contribution. It can create a European ecosystem in which cities, member states, the industry, the infrastructure providers, knowledge institutes, but also data space initiatives will work together. around the shared deployment challenges, and not by centralizing everything, let alone not by replacing existing initiatives, but let's connect them and make all the outcomes of all those players reusable. And this is important because my second message is that autonomous mobility is not only a technical challenge, it's also a governance challenge. Public authorities need to collaborate better across border and across levels of government, and member states are needed for policy alignment, the legal clarity, and of course the long-term governance. But the cities are needed because they deal with the real implementation, the everyday reality, the traffic management, the public space, the access regulation, the safety, the procurement, and the citizens. And the EDIC can help to bridge these levels. It can connect member states steering with city-level reality. Also, and that is also why we have these speakers today. It needs to really reach out and build on existing European initiatives like the already mentioned ECAVA, the CCAM-related projects, POLIS, EMTA, and the CCAM ambassadors. And here we need coherence, but we need to avoid any duplication. Lessons can be shared. The requirements should be made visible, and especially practical experience should feed into the future deployment. And almost at my end of my contribution, the last value is a more strategic one. Autonomous mobility depends not only on vehicles and software, but also on securing technology. We need to leave our being naive and really try to secure the digital infrastructure, the chips, the data governance, and the cybersecurity. We need to understand all those dependencies and strengthen to make sure that as Europe we have our own secure and trusted supply chains on the whole part of autonomous mobility. And that is the real added value where the EDIC MNL can play a role, and which will be supported by the Boost EDIC project for moving from fragmented pilots into a coordinated European deployment pathway. That is for me for now. Thank you, Adriana.
Thank you very much, Nico. So just to be clear with the people following us online, we don't have slides. We want to keep this conversational, but this helps us remember the people that are contributing to the session. And also wanted to let you know that in case you missed at the beginning, there is a Slido for you to add your questions, and we will have hopefully 15 minutes to go over them. So let's now move into the moderated panel discussion. And before we begin, I will briefly introduce the members of the panel. We have representatives from cities. So Elena De Ambrogio from Comuni di Torino and Mina Turpa from Forbirium Helsinki. We also have technology providers and mobility platforms, and they will bring their perspective on how autonomous mobility can be deployed. So we have Chiara Marchesi from New Links, Lobro Novillo from Verne, Denny Clich from Aoki, and Aurélien Bolsana from Volt. So I will start the discussion asking the same question to all of them, and perhaps I will keep the order in the table or how we introduce you. But it will be very good maybe in 1-2 minutes to hear from each of your angles. What do you see as the most important factors for scaling autonomous mobility services across European cities? Elena, if I may start with you.
Yes, nice to meet you all. As said, I work at the city of Torino. We have been engaged in several experimental activities since the last 8 years under the main open innovation platform, which is called Torino City Lab, and since 2022, to move Living Lab, which is a Living Lab dedicated to SICAM technology. So we had the possibility to really work in real, deploying an on-demand responsive autonomous shuttle service in very real traffic condition in the city, and also to test autonomous robot last mile logistics. So the main conditions for scaling up to us can be seen, first of all, in creating, let's say, a permanent experimentation and governance capacity in the city, which is putting together the institutions, the researchers, so universities and private research foundations, and of course the mobility operators like local transport authorities and all the in-house utilities supporting the cities in this, and not forgetting involving the citizens in the process. This was what we did in Torino in the last years. Second, we have to prepare cities building infrastructure. So what we did was to extend over the years connected infrastructure along the main testing corridors, including a roadside unit, connected traffic lights, cameras, communication platform, and extending CITS service. These investments have not been considered as a single project spot, but they are now permanent urban assets designed to support multiple services in the future. And also, a key condition is the start always from urban needs, not from technology. So we start adopting a use case-driven approach, because we do not have to start SICAM pilots because technology is available, but we have to respond specific urban and mobility challenge. In Torino, we are focused on feeder services connected to high capacity public transport, accessibility for elderly and vulnerable users, services for peripheral neighborhoods, nighttime mobility, and autonomous last mile logistics. Each use case generates a different form of public value and provides different operational lessons. This is why cities must directly be involved in defining priorities and assessing whether autonomous mobility genuinely improve existing transport system and sustainable urban mobility. We have a key condition: we cannot work alone, which is regulation. Today we are working through regulatory sandboxes and a very strong and close cooperation with national authorities make experimentation possible, but sandboxes are transitional instruments. So cities must continue to provide evidence to regulators based on real operating conditions, but we have now to start together at European level to work on regulation. So just to conclude, what is clear today also from this event is that besides working on technology readiness level, we have now to work and started to work to increase the city and territory readiness level. This means preparing cities and citizens and infrastructure, not only technologies, but also institutionally, operationally, infrastructurally, and regulatorily. Autonomous mobility will scale when also cities, territories are ready, will ready to scale for and the benefit of improved services for our citizens.
Thank you very much, Elena. So, Mina, if now we can hear from you and the experience in Helsinki.
Yes, thanks. So hello, everyone. My name is Minna Torppan. I'm a program director of Smart Mobility at Forum Virum Helsinki, which is an innovation company owned by the city of Helsinki. I will be bringing a little bit of different perspective to this issue, because for a long time, the industry's focus has been almost exclusively on autonomous passenger cars. And yes, we did our share of shuttle bus pilots, but we have since shifted our focus to more logistics and utility vehicles. And today, Helsinki has hundreds of delivery robots on our streets. They're operated by 2 commercially viable companies. And nowadays, our focus on autonomous mobility is more about managing the scale, integrating it into the city planning, preparing our physical and digital infrastructure for the next wave of autonomous public transit. And when it comes to these important factors for scaling autonomous mobility, I would think that to really scale across Europe, we need to move past technology demonstrations, and it ultimately comes down to aligning 4 key pillars. We need mature technology, we need the physical infrastructure, we need pragmatic regulation, and we need solid business cases. And right now for us, the logistics is actually driving scale much faster than passenger cars. The technology works well on our sidewalks, but to reach true scale, we need to still go deeper in infrastructure integration, like robots talking directly to city traffic lights and signs. But we also have to have the viable business case. So companies have to be able to generate revenue. And this is where we hit the major hurdle, because scaling from one city or country to another is incredibly difficult if the regulatory frameworks are completely different everywhere you go. So if we can harmonize those rules and solve these bottlenecks for logistics first, we are maybe laying the exact groundwork needed to eventually scale automated passenger transport as well. Thanks.
Thank you very much for the contribution, Mina. So it's fantastic to see the different approaches, and now moving a little bit to those innovators and technology providers that will respond to the challenge. Chiara, will you tell us a little bit about how New Links is active in this field?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Adriana, for inviting me. And New Links is a startup, as you probably already know from the previous days. And we know that urban mobility will shift from private car ownership to shared on-demand service powered by AI and autonomous driving. We have created our startup because we want that also Europe needs to be competitive on a technological level about autonomous driving. And this is why this is why the experimentation is important, and autonomous mobility in particular is not one size fits all, because every city has its own geography, its own density, its own demographic profile, and its own gap on public services. So what we want to do is to understand what municipalities and areas all over Europe need, and we want to pursue a solution that is shaped around their real coverage needs, reaching all the areas and the people that today's mobility left behind. We want to choose the right cities, the right zones within them, and this is a real strategic decision that can determine whether the service truly answer a need. And for this reason, we do not simply want to deploy into the cities, but we want to build our technology with them, the service. In Italy, for example, we are establishing and signing a memorandum of understanding with 7 of the country's largest and most strategic municipalities, defining together at an initial phases, an experimental phases, and then that lead step by step from testing to homologation and then to a live service on our street. And we want to expand the same model to a lot of different municipalities across Europe, so that the entire path to certification is designed hand in hand with the territories that actually will use it. So the most important part for scaling the autonomous system is to have a very connection with institutions, with municipalities, so with all the value chain that is that can use this autonomous driving technology. And that's why we are really happy to understand that there are initiatives such as the ADACities in the ECAVA framework, because it's a really important part that can help getting the connection in a faster way between the institution, so the European Commission in this case, and company as us that are software technologies, so that we can confront each other and understand what are the actual needs of the technology and the needs from the regulatory point of view. So we are working with the European Commission to understand which are the problems for having this type of technology, and and also with municipalities to understand what are the needs that our territory needs. And so we hope that we can manage to find a way altogether to have this service within 3 or 4 years on our streets.
Thank you very much, Chiara. So Laura from Verne, what do you see as the main barriers to move beyond pilots and start scaling?
Good afternoon, everyone. Representing Verne today, which, as you will have heard recently, is Europe's first commercial robotaxi service, at this point still with a safety driver. And it's that safety driver element, or the driverless approval element, which will be the most important in order to allow scaling services across European cities and between member states as well. The regulatory framework has already been mentioned, and we are happy in Croatia that we do have one of the most advanced regulatory frameworks for fully automated vehicles, enabling everything from prototype testing and facilitating prototype testing for the early stages of ADS localization is vital to prove to regulators that the performance is there. But most importantly, we also have a specific category of passenger transport specifically for fully driverless vehicles. Nevertheless, it's at the EU level, or at the inter-member state level, that the requirements for driverless approval need to be adapted. We've heard earlier today that there is a regulation in the EU 1426 and the new UNECE framework that's coming. But we look forward to either the large-scale deployment test beds, or as an alternative, the regulatory sandboxes within the ADACities initiative as a means of enabling driverless testing. Now, as part of our commercial service here in Zagreb, we have 10 vehicles for which we need the support of 40 plus in-vehicle operators that we are employing. And you can see immediately how requiring that kind of manpower is an immediate barrier to scaling up and increasing the number of vehicles. But other than that, in terms of scaling up, to conclude, it's not all about the regulation. It's also about the operational efficiencies which you are able to achieve as an operator. This has to do, of course, with how you manage your fleet. It has to do with how the service area is designed, and it also depends in large part on your cooperation with city authorities and in choosing the right service area, as Clara was saying, the right area of the city, which manages to both achieve the public policy interests of the city and increase the health of the overall transport network, but at the same time that is attractive enough for a business like us and others represented here to actually operate in that area, that there is enough demand within that area, and that it makes sense to increase the size of the fleet. That'll be it for me from now, but I look forward to elaborating on some of these issues later on in the panel as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lovro. And from Aoki, Denny, how do you see these main barriers or the factors, let's say, to move from piloting to scaling?
Yeah, hi there. First of all, thanks, Adriana, for calling Neolinks, Verne, and us the innovators in the room here. And second of all, thanks to you, Peter and Laura, to making the principles to scale very explicit, the principles of ADACities, because they are the foundation for scaling. So I really like that, and they align to our mission. Who is us? We are Aoki. We have integrated autonomous and driver-based services into existing public transport, the key message, into existing public transport networks, all over Europe. So we have a lot of practical experience when it comes to running autonomous fleets on our platform. And what we've learned across those projects is that deployments that work share one characteristic. Someone, at least one person, at some point did the planning work first, who analyzed the real network, the overall network they're working in. They calculate which vehicles at what size makes sense most and can create the most value for the whole system. They build a business case, in best case, and they could also survive maybe the funding phase even because they did all the math. However, not every project starts that way. In practice, actually, most don't. But the ones who reach sustainability or sustainable operations, they do all of this planning works. And therefore, for us, there are two major layers. One was mentioned several times, so it's reiterating here, but also shows the importance. It is the planning layer. So understanding the network before even one vehicle is procured. So really understanding about your local mobility, not just the offering, but also the demand actually, and where's demand at what time. So real data, real cost projection, to really have a base case to make a decision how you want to bring in autonomous and what effect they can have. And the second one, this is also a point Lovro just mentioned, is the operational layer, right? So really ensure that once the vehicle arrives and it's clear how to scale the service or how to set up the service, that it runs as part of the public transport system and connected to dispatch, integrated with existing lines and services. So all different modes of transport, they must be integrated from an operator perspective to make sure to have the highest value, not just for them on an economic level, but also, of course, for the passenger. And of course, the question for us all is, how do we make sure that these both layers are actually the standard for every European deployment? So everyone is really doing a network analysis to understand what makes sense, and also looking at the operational layer. Because again, as mentioned before, this matters. And other things are also important, like the homologation, of course, funding, yes. But in the end, if you checkmark this, but don't have a real clue where to put the vehicles and which impact it has, it really doesn't solve a problem. So these are the two things we are seeing as highly important to get from pilots to sustainable deployments. Happy to discuss this in the panel.
Thanks very much. So Aurélien, from Bolt, how do you see it? How do we move forward?
Yes, hi Adriana, hi everybody, thank you very much. As some of you may know, Bolt is the European leading urban mobility platform. We were founded in Estonia. We're actually present in all member states today. We recently kicked off the project of autonomous vehicles in Luxembourg, launched in Italy not so long ago in ride hailing. So we're really the European company by definition. And I think we really welcome this initiative, ADACities. It doesn't mean that other initiatives are not important and they complement each other. But I think what is important here in this initiative is that it puts the focus not only on that use case, but still this use case is mentioned, and it's not so often the case. I'm talking about the use case of autonomous ride hailing and robotaxis. And I mean, to be very direct, and I think at Bolt, this is how we prefer to do things. There's a bit of a paradox, meaning that it's likely that this will be the biggest use case for autonomous driving. I mean, Europe will definitely do it its own way, and I hope it will be the case. But still, when we look at the US and the China, autonomous ride-hailing, robotaxis are the biggest use case for this transition. A platform like Bolt intermediates hundreds of millions of rides every year in Europe. And progressively, I insist on the word, this is going to be brought to automatization, to autonomous vehicles. So it's very, very important that platforms such as us, cities, region, regulators, member states work together on this transition. And so far, when we, as a European leading urban mobility platform, we approach cities, well, there's not that many cities, to be frank, who signal themselves as welcoming to work and hosting those first pilots of autonomous ride-hailing robotaxis. And those millions, tens of millions of European citizens who, they're not only our clients, they are the inhabitants of the cities. And I hope really that there are cities with us today and that they are willing to work with us, because this is really a real partnership. Autonomous ride-hailing will remain complementing public transport, which remains the backbone. There's also walking and biking. But there are all those rides which will continue to exist because they address specific use cases which are not met elsewhere. So it's really important we work together. Please contact us as European platform. You can contact me on LinkedIn if you wish. And we really want to build together this framework. This is very important. It is key to progressively convert those rides. It's not about adding more cars in the streets. We have here a joint battle, a joint objective, which is to reduce the private usage of cars. Although the autonomous ride-hailing will help complement, at the end of the day, these are shared rides because it's a car which is shared by several people. So we have a joint objective. But you need to come to us. You need to work on this. Public transport is key. Shuttles are key. But please think also of autonomous ride-hailing or robotaxis. I'll stop there, but happy to discuss it further, also on the need to harmonize regulation.
Well, thanks all very much for opening the discussion and already showing some similar points in your minds and some points that bring a different type of focus and work forward. So we have 15 minutes left, but I will allow myself to maybe ask a quick question to you, and I will go, backwards, and let's aim for 5 minutes because we don't have too many questions in the slide. But going back to you, Aurélien, so mobility platforms sit between the users, the operators, the cities. What role can platforms such as Bolt play in helping this move and become more like a mainstream mobility service? What will be the lesson that other parts of the ecosystem could gather from the experience of Bolt?
Yes. I think the expression platforms might be a bit misleading because actually, I come from the ride-hailing world, and actually it's much more than that. A company like Bolt, operates several mobility services. We do car sharing. We have tens of thousands of cars, fleets which we manage today for car sharing. So we have all this experience. We have tens of thousands of micro-mobility vehicles, electric bikes and scooters that we have experience in managing as assets. And indeed, we, of course, already intermediate, as I said, hundreds of millions of rides every year in Europe with fleets, with drivers and so on. So we have this huge experience. And we want, obviously, as Europeans, to play a key role here. Again, I would like to insist on the need that European champions such as Bolt get support. We need to get support, otherwise in a few years, or maybe not even sooner, you will have only US and Chinese actors operating in Europe. I really want to insist that. And this is why you cities, you need to also see us as a partner, and you need to come to us, European players. There is Bolt here, but there are colleagues here in this panel also. You need to come to us to support us. Otherwise, in a few years, you will be only working with US and Chinese actors. This is what is going to happen. We need to gain experience. So Bolt has all those different experience, and it's not only a platform. Tomorrow, we can be the operator, actually. When I was a bit surprised, what struck me when I started to work in the autonomous vehicle, I would say, sector, is that everything was approached from a very technological point of view, which is key. But everybody forgets that at some point, this will become a commercial service. And a platform such as Bolt knows to balance demand and supply, knows how to fix the best price, which makes both the service and the clients happy, knows how to manage the times, the estimated time arrival. How do you make sure that the car doesn't arrive too late? So we really want to play a key role in the future here, which leads me to say briefly that the regulation, we're always talking about homologation. It's great. We're talking about traffic. It's great. Safety, super important. No one ever talks about the passenger transport rules. This is really something which struck me. Whereas this passenger transport rule will need to be adapted. And maybe this is finally the opportunity to harmonize at least a layer within the European Union, the passenger transport rules. Today, passenger transport rules in ride-hailing, sometimes they date from decades. You have as absurd rules as return to garage. The car is supposed to return to its point of origin after each ride. Minimum waiting time. Once you have an order, the car can't come because you are supposed to wait it. Minimum duration of trips, like you can't rent a car by less than 3 hours, for example. All of this exists in Europe. Maybe finally, with autonomous ride-hailing, we have an opportunity to harmonize, modernize, for the sake and the interest in first place of the European citizen. I think they are at the end, they are the most important, and the cities, of course. But we have a role here to play as this key and central player in Europe. So definitely, yes, we want to be this European champion. We are today in ride-hailing, in micro-mobility, in car sharing, and tomorrow we want to be in autonomous driving and make sure that European players will be there and that EU cities will not have to deal just with our friends from other continents. Thank you.
Thanks very much for the passion, for the contribution. I'll go to Denny because I would love to hear about your experience with DRT integrating into public transport. How do you see this now with autonomous vehicles as part of the equation?
Yeah, I think one of the major issues we have seen over the last couple of years is that DRT is currently seen as an add-on. So there's no integrated planning. It is seen as we do it on top beside our public transport, for example. And that again, coming back to my initial statement, but also what others were saying, it's highly important to not have, for example, autonomous DRT, also autonomous buses thinking into a silo and to think about I do it somewhere, but rather going back, really looking at the whole network. And I'm not just talking about public transport, I'm looking at the whole network, so all modes of transport, what is actually happening in my city. This is public transport, this is individual car ownership and how people are actually moving from A to B, maybe with bikes, car sharing, everything which is there. You need to look at the big picture. And once you have a better understanding about this, you can look where does it make sense most to integrate a DRT. And therefore, integration, I think, is also important to understand. It doesn't just mean that I add vehicles 24/7. It maybe also makes sense that they replace an existing line, right? So it's not an add-on, but rather looking at where can I increase efficiency by maybe reducing a fixed route service or a larger bus with DRT, for example, maybe even robotaxis, as Aurelien is saying is. We can see it with Ruter, for example, in Oslo, who are looking especially also for robotaxis for certain use cases. So again, looking at this from an integrative perspective and do the planning before. And once you do the planning and you go into execution, it was mentioned before with the data, it's of course highly important again that you look into the service data, how is maybe the modal split changing while you have the service on the road. And based on this data, which you collect with the new service, you can adjust and maybe see where there are more efficiencies which you can gain due to adjustments to the whole system.
Thank you, Denny. So from the business case point of view, from Vern Lobro, tell us a little bit, how do you see this, the time, the speed, and what do you have in mind in terms of becoming viable in more than one city, in 5 to 10 cities across Europe?
Well, Vern from the very start was built as a project not for a pilot, but for a commercial driverless service. And that's why in designing our urban mobility ecosystem and approach to this industry, we decided to develop 3 main things: a purpose-built vehicle, a purpose-built robotaxi designed from the ground up for fully driverless operations, a mobility service platform, which we use not only to control the fleet, but our own application through which our customers in Zagreb and soon in other EU cities as well, they can order the ride. And finally, what we call a mothership, a depot, the places where the vehicles come back every day to be charged, cleaned, and maintained. Now, when it comes to the vehicle, of course, the cost of the base vehicle is a major factor. The lower the cost of the platform and, of course, of the ADS, the quicker you are able to actually establish a sustainable business case. In my previous answer, I already talked about the fact that operational efficiency is quite important, and the way that you use your software solution or your backend systems in order to manage your fleet is also extremely important. And in terms of the mothership or the infrastructure, you want to utilize the vehicles as many hours in the day as possible. So you may have to make sure that the downtime of the fleet or of each individual vehicle is as low as possible. We already talked a little bit about driverless approval in the service area design as well. So we, in the interest of time, don't need to mention that again, but we do need to talk about the European value chain. We are aware that at the moment, there are no European platforms suitable for level 4 driving. We also do know that we have to use third country technology at the moment for all the services which will be rolled out in the next year or two. That is why it's extremely important that European operators of these kind of services, like Vern, like Bolt, like many others which might be listening or interested in getting in this space, do get that opportunity through the EU test beds and through autonomous drive ambition cities. And that's why we're also glad we're here talking about it today. That's all from me.
Okay, so we're running out of time. I will be very, very brief in my question to you, Chiara, because you have started, but how do you see this initiative helping you further and working with the municipalities, which was one of the key points in your opening remarks?
Yes. Sorry, Diana, could you please repeat the question?
No, very briefly, since we're running out of time, but I was curious for new links, a new startup, a European tech provider. How do you see this ADACities opportunity to connect to the municipalities, which you mentioned is a key ingredient for you to move forward?
Yes, I think that's very important because having a connection directly with the municipality can help us in having a faster contact with the municipalities and having a sort of helping the municipality in understanding what we are doing and why we are doing it, and the importance of doing it all together. I think that these are the main interesting things about the ADACities, because having a framework in which municipalities and tech companies are brought on the same page is very important, because usually the innovative technology is too innovative sometimes, and so it is very important to understand and to help all the ecosystem understanding what we are doing and why we're doing it.
Okay, thank you very much to everybody. I will allow myself perhaps to cut it now, and I really, really want to express my gratitude to Mina also and to Elena for bringing what the experience has been for you and how you're approaching and addressing this moving forward. So since we have a few minutes, I want to share some of the questions that we have received. So one is for the European Commission on how public transport operators, cities, research centers, and other actors can join ADACities, and whether players from non-EU Horizon Europe countries can join as well. Delimira.
So thank you, Adriana. I'll take these questions before going into what were my impression of the panel, but this will give me the floor when the time comes. So the first one, in terms of how they can integrate, basically the main milestones in terms how we apply are given in the call for expression of interest that was published on the 23rd. Mainly, you need to send an application as per the template, or let's say the different aspects that we have need to be filled in. And this can be done through actually a mailbox, a functional mailbox we have created for this purpose. So it is important, that just consortium partnership who are interested, they apply there. Now, in terms of coordinator point and how the partnerships are done, what is important is that for now we have taken the approach where actually it will be the city who will be the leading partner, in the sense that it will be the city who will be coordinating the partnerships. And from there on, basically from that perspective, this is how we'll look into what is viable. But yes, the cities have a main role to play there, or urban authorities. And for the exact wording of the call, again, you can see the precise requirements. Now about your question on the non-EU players, there is something to be unpacked there, because you're mentioning Horizon Europe, and you're mentioning, of course, non-European players. So basically, there are two different things, in the sense that the current call for expression of interest is, and this I repeat for those who were probably also connected this morning. The first call for expression of interest, the one that is published now, is just a call for the partnerships to basically manifest themselves, and it will intend to basically identify those partners who are interested in the initiative. So from that perspective, of course, everybody can do as per the requirements that I have just said. Now, when it comes to Horizon Europe, which is a completely different thing, in the sense that this is a program, and in case the call in which we work is completely finalized, and when the time comes, then, as you know, Horizon Europe has its own rules, and then the eligibility criteria will be drawn in line with those rules. When it comes to the initiative itself, again, there is now another point and another place to look at when you see how you partner, with whom and who is accepted. It is basically the EU-centric criteria that are in the scoping paper, which is the underlying policy basis, I would say, if I may allow myself to call this policy, which is not precisely the case in terms of our European Commission vocabulary. The scoping paper is basically given different aspects, in which cases and under which conditions, what type of control you can partner with non-EU operators. So I hope this helps, because the thing is that everything is in a case-by-case basis, and what is also important to flag is that a key element actually of the scoping paper is compliance with all EU legislation that we have in place. So this is also something which, of course, will enter into consideration both for the call, which is, as we say, non-binding and with non-financial envelope being associated to it, but also in relation to the Horizon Europe program, where, of course, there will be financing when it is clear in the current framing and discussions that the Commission is having there. So I hope this clarifies a bit, and just let me know if you would like me to clarify another aspect.
Thank you very much, Velimira, for your answer. There is one quick question to police on where one can find their charter. So perhaps if we can share the link in the channel. And Aurélien, very quickly, there's a question on the importance of road infrastructure.
Well, road infrastructure is key, of course. Now, I think in most of the use cases, in the short term, we are talking about mainly urban environments, I believe. So the beauty of it is that due to technological developments as of today, the autonomous vehicles can operate in the existing with the existing road infrastructure which exist in cities. Potentially later on, and I think all the pilots, which hopefully we will see in Europe, will help to demonstrate and show what potential improvements need to be brought to road infrastructure. But as we speak, let's say that that's not this does not prevent to launch the first pilots in Europe, which we hope to see very soon.
Thank you, Aurélien. So with that, I will wrap up. I will thank you all for your contributions, your time and your passion, helping enrich this discussion. And I will give the word back to Velimira in the Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adriana. I wanted to finish with 2 points. The one is a word of thanks to the IT Urban Mobility team, to you, Adriana, for having put in place this call, Justus, Judith, who is here with us in the room. I also wanted to thank all our speakers. I know how time-consuming this is. I met some of them yesterday in the ECAVA forum, and definitely this is something that I also appreciate seeing you also on site. So it's a pity that this was not the case today. I also wanted to close with a few takeaways from what I heard in this second panel. One is that autonomous driving needs to be integrated into public transport multimodal systems. The other one also responding to the city needs. I heard also the voice of the startup saying that basically they are wishing to build technologies for the purpose of fitting the public interest and the city needs. The major role that cities have to play in order to developing autonomous driving with different use cases might be priority in order to develop and scale and build the business case. One point which is also quite important and also that we have mentioned this morning is about the business case. The words that in order to retain our value in Europe, we would also need that public and urban authorities actually play and partner with our EU actors in order to accompany them to develop. Also the word of our EU-born champions that EU value chain is an issue in terms of doing commercial development and in terms of getting into a truly sustainable business case. And I really wanted to thank you all for all this perspective and for having participated in our info session and making a bit more than an info session, but also a workshop day. So thank you, and thanks a million also to the entire team here on our side who supported me and all my team in organizing this event. Thanks a million, and I hope we speak soon more even in details about how we go about implementing this. Thank you.